I've lived through a great deal of history. This is in a short span of years. I feel excited about it. It never dies in my heart. I think of it often. The most dramatic history in my era, in my time, was World War II. It is now possible for the first time to do a series of programs which have fidelity, authenticity, and high drama. We do not need anything spurious. Effects, phony shots, dramatics. Let the film tell the story. As a war editor of Collier's magazine, I lived through some of them. As a war correspondent, as a writer. I wasn't always right in what I said, but it's only now that I know I wasn't right. And it's only now that I think you will find a freshness, a newness, a compelling atmosphere about a series such as we project. I'm Jim Bishop. I write historical books. Once I was a war editor. The facts available then were mostly concerning our side. Now, all the records of all the nations are available. The pieces are falling into place. Nakamura Masaki was a Japanese infantry corporal in 1945. Today he's a miner living near Kyushu, Japan.
私は戦争の終わった年の11月に In November of the year the war ended, I returned home to my village of Miyazaki as a living ghost. The notice that I was killed in action was sent out, and my funeral was over by the time I returned. My name had been inscribed on this memorial to the dead.
Calvin Inman, one-time Carlson Raider, was a sergeant in the 5th Marine Division in 1945. Today a precision machinist, he lives with his family in Los Angeles.
I feel very lucky that my life was spared because some of the boys weren't so lucky that lived a lot better life than I lived. But I was one of the chosen few.
At Iwo Jima, Masaki and Inman met in battle. One Japanese, one American, relived that moment in history for us today. Iwo Jima, a black speck in the blue Pacific, 600 miles south of Tokyo. Only 2.5 miles wide, 4 miles long. It's an ugly island of volcanic rock and sand spewed up from the bottom of the ocean. Iwo is halfway between the American-held bases in the Marianas and the Japanese home islands. Here would be an ideal emergency landing strip for the crippled B-29s coming back from the Japanese fire raids. The U.S. Air Force needs it. The Japanese know it. And they don't intend to give it away. To command the island's defense, the Japanese High Command picks one of their toughest, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kurabayashi. In June 1944, he goes to Iwo to save the island or die there. In the next 3 months, he moves in guns, tanks, and troops, doubles the size of the garrison, does his best to render the island impregnable. Men arrive at the rate of 500 a day. By October, 21,000 troops are on the island. One of those troops is 35-year-old Corporal Nakamura Masaki. A veteran of the Manchurian campaign, Masaki is recalled to active duty from his job at the Mitsubishi Mining Company.
私は班長です。I am a squad leader. We are told that Iwo Jima is in danger. We have been sent here to help. We are ordered to dig. The earth is hot. I choke on the sulfur fumes. We can only work for 3 hours. Then we must rest for 3.
Here at Iwo Jima, Kurabayashi's defense will be unique. There will be no banzai charges, no frenzied counterattacks at the beachheads. A static defense with everybody dug in to stay. He divides the island into separate defensive sectors, rings each one with guns, mortars, landmines, and bunkers 5 feet thick. Underground, as this diagram shows, the island is a honeycomb of rock and cement. 5 levels of tunnels, most 30 feet below ground, connect the entire complex. When the attack comes, any advance will be made over dead Japanese bodies. The code name he gives his defense, Desperation. December 8, 1944. American B-24s call on the island. The Japanese have been using Iwo to stage raids on American B-29 bases in the Marianas. Admiral Nimitz awards it top priority. Neutralize it now, take it in February. For 74 days, the B-24s hammer the island.
The air raids go on and on, day after day. Will it ever stop?
Few of the deeply entrenched positions on the island are seriously damaged, but the island's anti-aircraft gunners have a deadly reputation, and their fire takes a heavy toll in bombers. February 12, 1945. 485 ships are about to begin Operation Detachment, the invasion of Iwo Jima. A vast armada forms near the Marianas and steams north to join the ships of Admiral Raymond A. Spruance's 5th Fleet, the most powerful naval force ever assembled under one flag. D-Day is set for February 19. Aboard are 75,000 assault troops, all Marines. Their commander, veteran Marine General Holland M. Smith. 3 Marine divisions make up the assault force. 4th and 5th divisions to go in on D-Day. The 3rd to be held in reserve offshore. Under the slope of Mount Suribachi, Sergeant Calvin Inman will go into Green Beach. A veteran of 4 Pacific Island assaults, Inman will land with the 5th Division on D-Day.
They tell us the island is shaped like a pork chop. It'll be hot, rocky, and dry, and we're to take this island in 72 hours.
From the beginning, the fleet's movement is no secret. Japanese spotter planes pick it up early, and submarines track it every foot of the way. Kurabayashi is warned. Expect invasion February 15 to end of month.
Today we learned that the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th Marine Divisions are on their way to attack us. Our officers seem confident. Morale is high. We are ready. Perhaps the gods will help us win.
Every soldier of every faith is certain that God is on his side. It is so at Iwo. It has always been this way. 0600, February 16.
We hide deep in the caves. The air is hot and filled with sulfur fumes, but at least we are safe. The shells exploding above sound like distant thunder.
It's a real morale builder, big guns booming. And we're going to land right under this fire that's going to keep our heads down a little bit while we come in on the beach.
dawn of D-Day, Monday, February 19, 1945.
Over the side. Remember when you get in the boats, keep your head down. All right, boys, let's go. And everybody gets down in the boat. You see that their chin strap and their steel helmets fastened and their rifles loaded. Everything's ready to go.
American intelligence estimates that there are 13,000 Japanese dug in on Iwo. The Marines will be facing over 22,000. 3 miles offshore, the landing craft circle, waiting to assemble, waiting for that signal that begins the long run into another unfriendly beach.
There's a feeling that a man has when he goes into battle that he knows when his time is up. But I always had this feeling that they're not going to get me.
The time draws near. If I must die, I shall die with honor.
Expect a shattered island, a demoralized defense. The bombardment had to work. The first Marines to land are sure it did. Then, within minutes, disaster. Marines are pinned down beneath a withering curtain of fire. The high ground is all ahead of them, and it all belongs to the Japanese.
They fill the beaches. We fire and fire at them, but they keep landing.
There's all the rest of the Marines right here. They haven't advanced too far, not over 150, 200 yards at the most. We're right behind them. We can't go any farther. So I get my men in a big shell hole, settle down until I get some word what we're going to do.
Commanding the beachheads at Iwo Jima, Mount Suribachi, a volcano extinct for years. But on D-Day, a new deadly fire pours from its slopes onto the island's open beaches. For the Marines who land at Iwo Jima, it's like Omaha Beach all over again. Steep ground up front, pinned down by a hail of gunfire, increasing in volume and accuracy. The beach is in turmoil. It is so glutted with wrecked equipment and sunken landing craft that the boats are running out of places to land. 30,000 Marines are ashore, but casualties mount alarmingly. More than 2,000 by the end of the day. More than 500 dead. Predictions that the island would fall in 72 hours now sound like sheer fantasy.
First day, then all the first night, all the next day, we stay right in this one hole. We don't move. because you don't dare move the artillery fire and the mortar fire and the rifle fire. You just can't believe what's going on above you.
The Marines call for help.
The island is surrounded by the enemy warships. The sky is filled with enemy planes. We are only 600 miles from the homeland. Where are our planes? Where is our Navy?
The Navy gives their code name for Mount Suribachi a new dimension. They call it Hot Rocks. D+1. Take Mount Suribachi. After constant pounding of the embedded fortifications, the Marines move off the beach. D+4. A small patrol of U.S. Marines moves toward the summit.
We heard from the grapevine that our troops was pretty close to the top of the hill. So all morning we was looking back towards the top of Mount Suribachi, just waiting to see what would happen when we did get to the top of the hill.
10:37 a.m.
It really makes you just swell with pride to see American flag, especially on the highest point of the mountain, where you know then from now on that we're going to be looking down their throats instead of them looking down ours.
The capture of Mount Suribachi is not a decisive victory. The main Japanese force remains intact. The Americans have the bony part of the pork chop. The Japanese in the north still have the meat. Sunday, D+6, a time for God. Somehow, with machine guns and mortars thinning out the ranks, God seems more real than he did a week ago. Sunday doesn't last long in a war. Now at the 3rd Division ashore, 60,000 Marines push north, straight into the main line of Japanese defense. It's not a battle of dramatic charges, of sudden decisive victories, only a stubborn, grinding advance. A battle fought in inches and feet, and the Japanese meet it on those terms. none is asked.
We're trying to take Hill 362, and I look up out the side of my eyes, and I see this big, huge object in the sky, B-29, landing, crippled, couldn't make it back to Saipan, and this gives us something that we see now why we were fighting.
Even while the furious battle for Iwo Jima is being fought, 35 of the big superforts will limp in for emergency landings.
They were behind us. They'd come out of a cave. But all we get is a handful of grenades coming out. They lob some grenades out. We have a demolition squad right there. We just holler for the flamethrower to come over.
By March 9, the bulk of the Japanese defenders have been driven into the northeast corner of the island, their backs to the water. In one area alone, 500 by 1,000 yards, the Japanese have 300 pillboxes, gun emplacements, booby traps. Maneuvering is almost impossible. The battle must be fought in face-to-face combat now.
We shoot at them from the narrow openings in the bunker, then crawl to the other places and fire again. It is like children playing the game of hide from the devil.
It gives you a real insecure feeling to see Marines right beside you. They're getting shot, shrapnel hitting them. You wonder why nothing's hit me yet.
Our numbers grow smaller. Several of the men have already committed suicide by showing themselves at the openings.
Frontal attacks have become too costly to continue. Flamethrowers burn out what can't be blasted out. March 21, 1945. General Kurabayashi radios Japanese troops on a nearby island. We have not eaten or drunk for 5 days, but our fighting spirit is still high. We are going to fight bravely to the end. 3 days later, his final words. To all officers and men, goodbye.
私は機関銃の弾にhit by a machine gun bullet. Stomach seems torn to pieces. The pain is unbearable. I have only to wait for the god of death.
Except for scattered pockets of resistance and sporadic raids from a few concealed Japanese, the Marines' battle for Iwo Jima is over. On March 28, General Holland Smith officially declares, Iwo Jima is secure. Corporal Nakamura Masaki lay wounded for 8 days before he was picked up and moved aboard an American hospital ship. Given fine care, his wounds healed during the next 2 months. For Sergeant Calvin Inman, it was to be his last battle. Fortunately, the invasion of Japan itself would never be needed. The Americans needed an airstrip, the Japanese needed time. Both got what they needed, but 27,000 lives bought it. The most densely populated battleground became the most densely populated cemetery. Of the men who fought and died at Iwo Jima, Admiral Chester Nimitz said it best: uncommon valor was a common virtue.
My feeling is that war should not be fought. People may say that I had a valuable experience, but I don't think I care for that sort of experience. The battleground brings out the ugliest part of human beings.
In 1944, Toyotomi Koyama was a corporal attached to the Imperial Army Tank Corps in the Philippines. Today he is an artist in Los Angeles, California. Ignacio Passos is a carpenter living in North Hollywood, California. In 1944, he too fought in the Philippines as a sergeant in the United States Army 1st Cavalry Division.
When I was up for discharge, they told me they'd give me a good grade if I stayed in the Army. But I told them, I've had it. I was lucky enough to come back with 2 arms and 2 legs, and I just wanted out.
In the final battle for the Philippines, the lives of Toyotomi Koyama and Ignacio Passos came together for a brief moment. 2 fighting men, 1 Japanese, 1 American, relive that moment in history. I'm Jim Bishop. In 1942, General Douglas MacArthur was ordered to leave the Philippine Islands before they fell to the Japanese. As he left, he made a promise: I shall return. To the Filipinos, to those who were left behind, MacArthur's words were a guarantee that American forces would return. Now, in the fall of 1944, Douglas A. MacArthur is about to fulfill that promise. For more than 2 years, the Japanese have held the Philippine Islands. By the end of summer, the American drive across the Pacific has cracked through their outer defenses and is heading toward the Philippines. More than 200,000 men are brought in to defend the islands. To command this army, the Japanese picked the conqueror of Singapore, Tomoyuki Yamashita, regarded by some as Japan's greatest general. Out of 7,000 islands in the Philippine archipelago, Yamashita predicts the Americans will land in the central Philippines on the beaches of Leyte. He sends only 1 division to that island to fight a delaying action. The bulk of his army is kept on the northern island of Luzon, from where he can launch a crippling counterattack. By September 1944, the Japanese are convinced invasion is imminent. They will let the Americans strike, then use the full force of the Japanese Army, Navy, and Air Force to crush them. To spearhead such a counterpunch, he chooses units from the Imperial Army Tank Corps. Behind one of their guns is a 22-year-old corporal, Toyotomi Koyama.
自分が軍隊に召集されたのは I was in my third year of college studying physics in Japan when I was drafted into the army. That was 3 years ago. I hope the war will end soon so I can go back to my studies. Since the Philippine people speak Spanish, we are told to call them amigo to show them we are all friends. On the outside, they are very courteous to us, but there is bad feeling underneath, and it is growing worse. Our officers are being ambushed, and we must organize small platoons to counter the activities of their guerrillas. Swarms of American planes fly overhead. They attack our ships in Manila Bay near Bataan. They bomb our planes at Clark Airfield. Up to now, I had hopes of returning to Japan. Now, my hopes are gone.
October 15th, the U.S. 7th Fleet and transports head for the Philippines. Over 700 ships. Aboard are more than 200,000 men of the U.S. 6th Army, veterans of Guadalcanal, New Georgia, Bougainville, and New Guinea. Under the command of General Douglas MacArthur, they must deliver the 1-2 punch to liberate the Philippines. First, Leyte, then Luzon. 16 waves of assault troops are to go ashore. The men of the 1st Cavalry Division will head for a mile-long stretch of sand called Beach White. With them is a sergeant from Phoenix, Arizona, 23-year-old Ignacio Pasos.
When we were back at Fort Bliss, Texas, my outfit, the 1st Cavalry, never expected to go across. We were mounted troops. We rode horses all the time, and we figured they ain't got no use for mounted. All of a sudden, they tell us, "You got 7 days to get your affairs in order." The horses disappeared quick enough. They left us the name Cavalry, but we're an infantry outfit now. We figured the Marines would go into the Philippines and take all the glory like they did at Guadalcanal, and we'd get stuck with our usual job, spending months in the stinking jungle mopping up. But this is going to be an all-Army show for a change.
The convoy heads for the bombardment area, but a network of mines blocks the entrance to Leyte Gulf. Minesweepers and demolition teams are called up to clear the way. For 24 hours, American guns plaster the island of Leyte. A-Day, the bombardment is turned on full force while the Army gets set to go ashore.
At times, you wish you can stay on board ship forever. Then you think, you have to go in sometime, and you might as well get it over with. When you're going in, you want to get someplace where you can dig in and protect yourself. Out here in a boat, if someone starts shooting at you, where are you going to go? Then the steel door drops down, and you're afraid there's a machine gun waiting to get you. A Navy boatmate tells me that every time he lowers that ramp, he feels like he's sending more men in to be killed. I bet right now, a lot of guys must be thinking, If MacArthur says, I shall return, why do we have to go with him? We push in about a half mile before we meet up with opposition. It's mostly small arms fire. Then we run into a couple of pillboxes. They're so camouflaged and built in, you have to practically walk over them before you can find them.
4 hours later, MacArthur himself comes ashore to keep a promise he made 2.5 years ago.
We're way ahead of our schedule. We captured some tin buildings on Tacloban airstrip. They're supposed to contain some kind of instruments that intelligence wants intact. Turns out they're full of whiskey and sake. Intelligence wants that intact too.
Within 24 hours, American troops capture Leyte's capital city, Tacloban. Its airport can now be used to blast the anchor on the Philippine chain, Luzon. The Imperial Navy now launches Operation Shogo. 3 Japanese task forces head for the Philippines. The carriers will be offered as bait to lure the powerful U.S. Third Fleet away from Leyte. The 2 other forces will then converge to smash the American 7th Fleet in Leyte Gulf. The Americans grab the bait. The Japanese plan works perfectly. The 3rd Fleet steams north to chase the Japanese carriers. October 23rd, American submarines spot the Japanese ships heading for Leyte Gulf and make the first move. The Japanese cannot match the high-speed portable runways of the American carriers. October 25th, the battle is all but over. As an effective striking force, the Japanese Navy is finished. On the main island of Luzon, Yamashita feels it is pointless to make a stand in the capital city, Manila. Its civilian population is too great. Its buildings too inflammable. Its flat land would require too many troops to defend it.
We are sent to San Miguel on the Central Plains, just north of Manila. If the Americans land on Luzon, we will be in a central position to attack. Being just soldiers and not officers, we cannot grasp the whole situation of the war, but we can feel that danger is approaching.
Yamashita leads his army to the hills. He has a force half the size of MacArthur's. The Japanese dig in and wait. The Americans must come to them. But the Japanese Navy, under different orders, has no intention of pulling out of Manila. Instead, they cram 16,000 troops into an area of 14 square miles. Their plan of action, a fight to the last man. They turned the streets of the city into a deadly obstacle course. Mines, depth charges, even airplane bombs are placed in the path of the expected attack. Every house and every building is transformed into a small arsenal. As one soldier puts it, if the Americans manage to get to Manila, they'll have to take it one room at a time. January 9th, 1945, S-Day, the invasion of Luzon. Phase 2 of the American plan to liberate the Philippines. Committed to the operation, 15 divisions, nearly 300,000 men, the mightiest army in the Pacific War.
The landing puts us closer to Japan, so we figure they're really going to come at us this time. Actually, it's good to think like that. You prepare for the worst. Then whatever happens, it doesn't seem so bad after all.
There is little opposition from the Japanese. The 6th Army surges forward. They are to drive south down the Central Plains to Manila.
When we meet them on the ridges, they're all dug in. They're not firing at us at all. They don't want to give their positions away. They just wait until they can get a good shot at us. Then they open up. Somebody has got to get close enough to use the flamethrower or toss a hand grenade and get them out of there. We figure it's you or him. If you can get the jump on him, man, you've got it made. They say the Japanese fight for their emperor, the English for their king, and the Americans fight for souvenirs. I guess it's true. Right after things are over, we go out and see what we can find. Everybody has to have some kind of souvenir to prove that we were really here.
For 2 weeks, bitter fighting delays the American push to the south. But by the end of January, 6th Army's rear is secure. The green light is on for the drive to Manila.
The Filipino guerrillas come down from the hills and give us information about the Japanese, where they're at, how many, are they worth going after. Some of the guerrillas help us out quite a bit. Others are just trying to cash in on the glory. We follow the assault troops through the villages, and on all the buildings, wherever there's a little space on the wall, some guy draws a picture and writes, "Kilroy was here." That way, we know our boys have already passed through and cleaned the place out.
We learn that Americans have conquered Leyte, and now they are trying to capture Luzon. They are driving south from Lingayen. We are to meet them head-on. We are to stop them before they get to Manila. We are being pushed back by enemy planes. We call for our planes to help us, but they do not come. Our Air Force has run out on us. We are forced to retreat and hide under the trees. I take the machine gun off the tank and move away from it. A minute later, I see my tank blow up. Escaping is all we can do. They chase us all the way into the mountains. Everyone is near starvation. You eat wherever you can to stay alive. One soldier, about 50 years old, asks me for a grenade. I know what he's going to do with it. He walks to the bank of the hill, and I hear the explosion. Many die from hunger and sickness. There are mountainous piles of Japanese corpses. There were 285 men in my company. Only 20 are left. In my platoon, only 2 of us are still alive.
When the people see the American army coming, they know they're liberated. It's wild. It sure gives you a good feeling to know you can make people so happy. You haven't had a hot meal for a long time. You get set to eat and some kids come around and look at you. You just shove your food over to them. Grown-ups don't suffer like the kids. A grown-up can always hustle for his own. But what can a kid do?
66 hours after starting their drive, American troops are at the gates of Manila.
One of the places that has to be cleaned out is the ballpark. They're hiding at the far end of the stadium, under the bleachers and seats and everything, shooting across to our side. Some ball game. They've got a crossfire going. One machine gun on one side of the street and another machine gun on the other side. They protect each other. And you're dead if you're caught in the middle.
For 1 week, Americans claw their way forward as the Japanese continue their savage defense. February 15th. Lacking proper communications, General Yamashita learns only now of the battle raging in Manila. He orders Admiral Iwabachi to pull all troops out at once. It is too late. The Americans have surrounded the city. The Japanese are being squeezed from every direction. All withdrawal routes are cut off. Escape is impossible. But surrender, says Iwabachi, is out of the question.
They've got this place so well entrenched that they fire a shot from one side, and before you know it, the same guy shooting at you from the other side. They crawl through these concealed tunnels. They're diehards. They won't give up. They know they're beaten, but they won't give up.
March 3rd, organized resistance comes to an end. On its day of liberation, the city of Manila, the Pearl of the Orient, is a massive graveyard. 1,000 Americans, 16,000 Japanese, 100,000 civilians. Sergeant Ignacio Pasos rotates back to the U.S. in August 1945. He is discharged the same day the atom bomb is dropped on Hiroshima. Corporal Toyoza Koyama, after holding out in the mountains for 3 months, finally surrenders to the Americans, more than a week after VJ Day. More than 13,000 Americans, over 200,000 Japanese are killed in the battle for the Philippines. The war ends while they are still fighting here in the Philippines.